Please welcome Hillary Rodham Clinton, former Secretary of State.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you all. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you all so much for being here today. I am so proud of the work that is being done by the CGI Action Network over this past year. As we've seen firsthand, it has brought together so many different groups and stakeholders, and we can see the impact that the work is having here in Puerto Rico and across the Caribbean. You know, when the Clinton Foundation was started by Bill after he left the White House, he wanted to find a way to help people solve more problems by working together than they could by working alone. And he founded CGI with that same belief that partnerships are the most effective ways to meet the challenges we face. So when he was approached by Caribbean governments and other regional leaders in 2017, asking for assistance in the wake of the devastation caused by Hurricanes Irma and Maria, he thought that the CGI Action Network was the best model to help this region not only rebuild, but to build back in a way that's stronger, better, and more sustainable. So it's been well over a year since the storms made landfall, but their effects are still being felt. Some of the most devastating repercussions have been on the young people in this region, particularly when it comes to education, jobs, and access to health care. Now, even before these hurricanes, the Caribbean had some of the highest youth unemployment rates in the world, about 20% above average. Unfortunately, that has gotten worse. Lack of employment opportunities, unstable home and school environments, long-term trauma mean that there is the real fear of a lost generation in this region unless the work that all of you and others are doing can provide more of an effective response. So it's critical that we reinforce the social and economic safety nets that can help empower young people to envision and create communities that are viable, prosperous, and more inclusive. In this first session, we're going to hear directly from young people who are helping their communities build back better and who have their own visions and hopes for what this recovery will look like. From solarizing schools to teaching students to code, the members of this action network are working hard to ensure that these storms don't leave our children and young people behind. But there still is a lot of work to do, as many of you know firsthand. And unfortunately, there's not enough of a sustained commitment to the region. Too many governments, international relief agencies, and others have not stepped forward in the amount of help and resources that is needed. So CGI has always been about bringing unlikely partners together, and that's what I hope many of you are doing and looking for here. And I am very inspired by the stories we've heard, the people we've met on our site visits. And I think after hearing from these panelists, you too will see how crucial it is to include young people in all of our conversations around issues like education, mental health, food security, clean energy, community engagement, and everything else, to provide the kind of partnerships and initiatives that will make a difference to them. Now, I want to make a first commitment announcement, and I want to invite Jasmine Victoria and the Cathexis project to the stage. In Puerto Rico, Hurricanes Irma and Maria exacerbated an already dire economic situation, especially for small business owners, which are the backbone of any economy, but were truly the indispensable backbone of the Puerto Rican economy, causing an estimated 5,000 to 8,000 small businesses to permanently shut down. In addition, the storms caused an increase in mental health issues, exposing ongoing challenges across the island and leading to a 30% increase in the island's suicide rate. Small businesses and entrepreneurial growth is critical to rebuilding Puerto Rico's economy, yet many business owners are still struggling to overcome business and personal losses as a result of the hurricane's devastating damage. And at the same time, most efforts to support small businesses in the storm's aftermath do not address the very real psychological fears of small business owners. Think how terrifying it would be to see your business destroyed, to have your home damaged, maybe irreparably, perhaps lose a family member, perhaps lose them not only to death, but to serious injury or even to migration. And here you are, uniquely vulnerable to all of the impacts of these disasters. So, to better equip Puerto Rico's small businesses with the tools they need to recover and grow, the Cathexis project will launch an 18-month pilot training program for 240 small business owners across 12 municipalities on the island. This curriculum will build upon interventions that were deployed following other disasters, including the Oklahoma City bombing, 9/11, Hurricane Katrina, and the Haiti earthquake. But it will be especially tailored to overcome the specific barriers in Puerto Rico, such as the stigma around seeking counseling and mental health support. This innovative curriculum will offer both entrepreneurship education and mental health support. Topics will include business management, financial literacy, leadership, and mindfulness, techniques to strengthen well-being in the face of ongoing challenges. And the commitment will give trainees skills to help their businesses succeed, but also practical tools to mitigate the effects of trauma and support the emotional health of themselves and others. Now, how can you help? Well, this commitment is actively seeking additional funding to hire and train staff to serve the pilot communities. And so if you have an interest or you have an expertise in this area, please find Jasmine and or the CGI staff to talk about how you could help them achieve their goals with this very important commitment. Now, the second commitment, I want to invite to the stage Lilian Rodriguez of Voces.
Hi, Lilian. So great to see you. Thank you for coming to Puerto Rico.
I'm so happy to be back. Thank you. Once again, I think we have to focus on how Hurricanes Irma and Maria severely impacted families in the island. Children and their families experienced significant mental health challenges due to the loss of homes and property, separation from loved ones, and extended time without basic necessities. Studies show that natural disasters have long-term effects on mental health and well-being, especially for parents facing the challenge of looking after themselves as well as their children. But there just aren't enough mental health practitioners in Puerto Rico to address the needs of the population due to, in much measure, by the ongoing exodus of medical professionals. who are understandably seeking opportunities outside of Puerto Rico. In the last 3 years, more than 8,000 health specialists have left Puerto Rico. To address these issues, Voces will launch Voces Resilience, a pilot program to build the psychological resilience of children, youth, and their families in Santurce, Puerto Rico. Voces will recruit and train 10 mental health counselors to provide in-home therapy to at-risk children and youth, helping them to understand and manage emotions, and help empower families to cope with daily stressors and conflicts while building resilience for the future. At the same time, these programs will allow counselors to fulfill the work hours they need to obtain their licenses in Puerto Rico, reducing the need for them to leave the island for professional opportunities and supporting the future mental health workforce. After the pilot, Voces will evaluate the program and work to scale and solidify in-home therapy as a permanent intervention to build psychosocial resilience across the island. To support this work, Voces is seeking community partners and funding partners for this pilot and beyond. And let me just add, as I referenced the studies that have been done, having been involved with the recovery from Oklahoma City, 9/11, Katrina, it is absolutely clear that this is such an important part of the whole rebuilding better, rebuilding the human heart and the human soul in the face of such devastation. So I really applaud those who are working now on this, and I want to present one of our certificates to Voces. Okay, now, let's see here. Are we doing one more certificate? No, we're going to go right to the panel? Okay. We have so many commitments, I can't keep track of them all. All right, now. We're about to meet some incredible young people who really exemplify this spirit of resilience, young people acting on behalf of themselves and others and their communities. So please welcome Adaja Benjamin, Shauna Fabienne, Amira O'Day, and they will all come and we'll have a chance to meet them and they can tell you about their stories. We're so happy you all are here. Thank you very, very much. And you know, this panel focusing on young people and the response to the hurricanes is really here by popular demand because as Bill and Chelsea traveled across Puerto Rico into the rest of the Caribbean to look at the damage, they kept encountering these extraordinary young people and their stories. And we want to really share those with you to give you some sense of what is possible, but also what these young people need to be able to fulfill their own hopes and dreams for their lives and for their communities and their futures. So let me start with you, Adaja. You have been involved in a program that is run by My Brother's Workshop, which is a CGI partner and a commitment maker. You were in St. Thomas during Hurricane Maria, and immediately afterward, you found a way to help. And what I would really like you to share with the audience is your own personal experience during the hurricanes and the aftermath, and specifically what you did and how My Brother's Workshop and other local organizations responded immediately after the hurricanes.
Okay, good day. Um, well, after the hurricane, I was on the island for the two hurricanes, Irma and Maria. So I got hit 2 times. Um, After the hurricane, I was home. My mother, she said, let's go on a drive. So we passed by MBW, the workshop, and I saw a long line outside the shop. So I was like, what's going on in there? And I came out of the car, and then I went in, and I see the staff giving out food to people. So I was like, I want help. And that's what I did. I put on a better shirt, and then I started to help give out food and did so many stuff. I was very, very tired. Like after we did that for like 3 months. I was so tired. We gave out 37,000 meals to people, everybody. It didn't have to be poor people, different people. We gave out meals and clothes, deodorant, help in so many different ways. So that's what we did.
How has that experience affected your plans for the future?
Well, I'm in school. I'm a high schooler. I'm in 12th grade. That it really didn't affect me. Like, it helped me, like, to show me patience. Like, I wanted to always rush and do stuff, but like, it humbled me to like show me that everybody is on the same like level. Like, you understand? Everybody is the same. Like, I was working and going to school. We had to share schools, so we had split session. I had like that because I used to work and still go to school, so I was making money and going to school.
How is the recovery now in St. Thomas?
Well, I would say it's 100% to me, but different people might say it's different. I like the way it is. We have internet, we have TV. School is going good. We're not doing split session anymore. We have the full sessions of school. So I would say that we're good. Yeah.
Well, you helped it make it that way, so thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Our next panelist, Soana, is from Dominica. Now, we've had great representation of very impressive people from Dominica, all women so far. So I welcome you in joining the Baroness and the Foreign Minister from yesterday. You were born and raised in Dominica, and I think everybody here is going to want to visit Dominica if they haven't already, because it's a place that not only is stunningly beautiful but produces amazing people. And as I understand it, you left for a program, a master's program in disaster response at the University of Auckland in New Zealand, and then you were back on the island during Maria. So you have a really unique perspective. You are someone who has studied disaster response. You're a disaster risk specialist. Could you describe your experience and the groups that you worked with, and how you saw what was needed and what is still needed in Dominica?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity for being here. And I'm really happy to be representing my country here this morning. Hurricane Maria was the worst experience. Going through Hurricane Maria was the worst experience of my lifetime. And even when I speak about it still today, I crack up because it was traumatic. But I grew up in a very small community, very tightly knitted. And I remember leaving the Roseau, which is the capital, and saying, I'm going to my brother's because I need to spend the time, or I need to pass the hurricane with my family. And we were home, and about 5:30 in the afternoon, we were experiencing some very strong winds, and I called a friend who worked at the Office of Disaster Management, and I said to him, are we experiencing the hurricane right now? Because I know it is expected to pass at 8 p.m. in the night. And he says, no, Soana, this is just tropical storm conditions. And I'm like, what? And then at 9:30 in the night, about 9:30 to 10, we experienced some winds, and I remember we're like people of faith in Dominica, so I started singing some really like Christian songs like I Know the Master of the Wind, etc. And then at some point I'm like, where's the Master of the Wind? Because I'm like, Lord, I can't lose anything else, because I lost my dad while I was doing my program in New Zealand, and I'm like, I was like the people on Titanic. I was like, I better sing Nearer My God to Thee, because I think I'm going to die. We're all going to die. But the night was long, and I couldn't wait for the morning. And when I woke up in the morning, when I looked outside, I was like, oh my goodness. Like, and I felt like I was like the soldier, forefront soldier, because having a disaster management degree, my brother is looking at me and he's like, can you solve the problems now? And I'm like, no degree prepares you for such devastation. When I looked at the mountains, which is what we have in Dominica, we have a lot of lush green mountains and stuff. The ground was black. It was like roasted, like someone sent fire down on Dominica. And I felt compelled to go to Roseau, where I felt my help was needed much more. And because one thing with my community is that because we're so tightly knitted, everyone came together and cleaned up the streets, and we were slaughtering chickens and roasting them so that we could, smoking them so that they could last much longer, because by now the electricity and everything had been cut off. And when I went to Roseau, it was like 2 weeks later, because we had no access to the city. I met with Israel for the first time. And Israel is an international agency from non-profit and NGO from Israel, involved in disaster response and development work. And they were like small people, like little people, but doing so much, because their presence was felt everywhere. And they were on stream with different response projects. And I'm like, I want to associate myself with these people, but time would only tell. And at that moment, I was deployed to the Emergency Operations Center, and I worked with the Distributions Committee. And I'm like, if I work in the Distributions Committee, then it means that I could supply food to my community. Like, they would never be without food, because there's someone representing them there. And for me, moving out of that immediate experience, I'm like, I found my place. There was definitely some purpose in me doing a disaster management degree, and I'm definitely going to assist my country in building resilience, because I think the fundamental essence of resilience is community. And my village was a perfect example of that. Like, we have social connection and social cohesion and that kind of stuff, which is what people need in times of disasters, because we could do all these fancy things. At the end of the day, it boils down to people, and Dominica is full of lovely people and people who are resilient because of our culture, because of our indigenous culture as well. We are the country still in the Caribbean with indigenous people, and I think one of them is here this morning, and I'm really happy about that. And yeah, I maybe lost sight of the question, but this is what I want to share.
Well, I love that story. And it was interesting that in your personal experience, IsraAid was there.
Yeah.
A long way from Israel.
Yeah.
And they have developed real expertise in responding to all kinds of emergencies. Can you talk a little bit about your involvement with them, and are you still working with them or through them?
Yes, I am still involved with Israel. Actually, right now, I started off as a disaster risk management specialist, but now I'm the education program manager. And basically, they're supporting in partnership with UNICEF and our local NGO East Federation, supporting the Ministry of Education's preparedness and response mechanisms there, because largely our schools were affected, and those that were not affected were used as shelters for people. So you could imagine that the children did not return to school at a reasonable time. And Israel is an organization that sees the need with the help of the local partners, and they address it and they attend to it. And we're doing it's like a paradigm shift, I would think, because we're trying to change a culture, and to change a culture, it starts with education, and education on the lowest level. So we're working with the early childhood development centers to sort of equip the students with the knowledge, because knowledge is power, and knowledge can change generations. And I just imagine the ones that we're training right now who are 3 years old, or even the ones in the high school who are now 15 years old. In the next 15 years, they will be like the leaders of tomorrow, standing on stages like this to represent Dominica. And because we're moving towards the vision of climate resilience and being the first climate resilient country in the world, this program that we're doing with the Ministry of Education, Israel is doing, is actually impacting that directly. And I'm very, you should put your hands together for Israel, because they're very effective in Dominica. And thank you. And the thing is, they have a beautiful story about their deployment to Dominica, really. There's this foundation, Beverly Foundation. It's two brilliant couple who built this really awesome resort in Dominica, very, very lovely resort. And when we were struck by the hurricane, they were like, she has Israeli background. So she called Israel and she was like, hey, Dominica needs help. We don't know how, but we need help. And in 2 days, Israel was in Dominica. I'm going underground and doing the needs assessments, et cetera, to really do more with the Dominican population. And Israel is committed to not just responding. It's easy to bring medical supplies or, relief and stuff, but the development work, the long-term goal of staying in the country and equipping the local partners or the local people is what Israel is committed to. And that's the reason why I'm here today. And that's the reason why I have a job as a young person, because it was a risk to leave my government job for 9 years and said, like, hey friends, I'm resigning, I'm going to work with Israel. And they're asking you, like, what? Like, you leave your government job to go for Israel. How long are they going to be here? Do they plan to stay here forever? I'm like, I don't care. They're doing stuff that I want to get involved in, and I'm going to take the risk. And one of my friends did say to me, that's not so prudent as a disaster risk manager, because that's a big risk. But look at the risk today, and I'm really happy to be part of that movement. It's awesome, and thank you.
That is great. Now, Amira, you are here because you're Puerto Rican and you are part of this island and part of its culture and all of its efforts to be more resilient. Please talk to us about what it was like for you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and then your experiences after Hurricane Maria, because you have focused your energy on reforestation and food security, two things that we keep coming back to because they are absolutely essential to any kind of response that is going to prepare us for what happens next or for recovery, and certainly when it comes to resilience. So Amira, talk to us about what you're doing and your experiences here in Puerto Rico.
Thank you. Hi, I'm from Puerto Rico. Welcome to everyone who is visiting. I'm so happy that you're here. I've been an environmental organizer for around the past 10 years, but environmental issues have been my interest since forever. I remember being 5 years old and I'm writing a letter to the mayor of my town complaining about those trees that were being cut behind my house. I always was some sort of like hippie kid. And I've been working around different issues like plastic pollution or training other people to become young leaders in their own community. And after Hurricane Maria, the day right after, I left my house and just like you saw, all the mountains were like black. Everything was bare brown. And I couldn't even recognize the places that I was seeing, the places where I lived all my life. And it was so shocking that I immediately thought, I have to do something. I have to do something to solve this because this is just too much. And it was also a way of like getting my mind out of a place where I was like, where am I gonna get water? Where am I gonna find food? And are my friends and family okay? Because I couldn't communicate with any of them. And together with one of my best friends, my partner in this project, Dariana Matei, we joined forces and started to work on reforesting Puerto Rico with food security in mind. So we thought initially, like, let's do like a 1-month project where we go plant trees somewhere, and that's it. And it kept on growing. It was a lot of hard work, but thankfully a lot of people in the mainland US helped us sending us seeds and some donations for us to buy trees here from local vendors. And we started with a goal of giving out 1,000 trees. And so far, we continue to work, and we have impacted more than 2,500 families with fruit trees and seeds all over the islands.
That's so exciting because you can go back and visit all your projects and see how well they're doing. But the idea of, planting fruit trees in particular ties in with your food security goals as well. How do you envision being part of this very important mission going forward? Are you going to continue this work? Are you going to work on both reforestation and food security through the planting of trees that can give forth food, as well as hold the soil and try to rebuild the environment?
We don't plan on stopping anytime soon. We have a long way to go. In Puerto Rico, we import more than 80% of what we eat, and that's just not sustainable. And I always knew that, but it's not until you live it in your own skin, figuring out like, I'm hungry and my fridge is empty, my kitchen is empty, where am I gonna find food? And that is super scary to think about and to live that. And I still think back to that day, like, how am I gonna feed myself and my family? And I just like start shaking. And I can imagine all the thousands of families that had to go through the same thing. So we continue to do this. We are going to schools to give school gardens seeds so that children can learn how to grow their own food and the importance of the connection to the soil. We go to communities and go house by house talking to people about this and giving them trees and seeds. We go to different communities to talk about food security and to help people recognize the power that they have in their own hands and in their own gardens to make food security possible. And even if we don't get the chance to produce 100% of what we produce, we are part of building something to get us closer there and to help people realize that they can do this and that we don't need to sit around and wait for help. We are powerful, we are smart, and we are gonna get through this.
Amen. Amen. That's great. This kind of energy and this determination that our three panelists have displayed is, something that just really excites us, because that is the model that we want. There is something for everybody to do. And I want to just briefly finish up by asking each of you a follow-up final question. Now, Adaja, I know that you're a high school senior.
Yes.
And you're graduating this June,
Yes.
right?
Yes, I am.
And I know that, at least I've been told, you are already knowing where you're going to go to college. So why don't you tell us about that and what you want to study and how you think your continuing education can affect St. Thomas and the Virgin Islands in the future?
Okay, well, the college I want to go to is in Boston. It's the Simmons University. I want to study to be a trauma surgeon. The bakery helped me to make that choice to becoming a trauma surgeon, because I have to cook. I have to work on a line. And where the bakery is where the tourists come in. That's where the cruise ship docks up and stuff. So all the tourists come in there, and I have to make food for them. And workers come in there, and they have to go back to work. So I have to try and make their food so they could get back to work on time. So I had to be like under a lot of pressure so they could get back to work. So I think I could work good under pressure. So I have to be able to cut the food good. Dealing with so much, like, you have to have order, you have to have a time. Like, I was on a timer, so I feel like that could, like, help me to be a trauma surgeon. And, like, I live in the Virgin Islands. I don't want to say that we have a lot of violence in the Virgin Islands, but we have violence, and, like, I feel like I want to go away to study to be the test. I could come back home to help, but like, I don't think that the Virgin Islands have opportunities for me when I come back. So I was just going to go to the States and then live up there. But I mean, I wanted to have opportunities because I love the Virgin Islands. I want to come back home to live and help out. I don't want to leave the Virgin Islands, but this is what I want to do. I want to be a trauma surgeon and like help the Virgin Islands. Right now, I'm in school with another school on the same campus as me. Like, I don't know like how we together do, but we're doing it. I mean, we working together. Like, everything is getting done, so I can't really complain, but that's what I want to do.
Well, it's interesting because what you're talking about are problems that predate the hurricanes and are still challenging for many places in the Caribbean. There is violence, there is organized crime, particularly drug trafficking. There are not enough jobs for young people with a growing economy. So a lot of the recovery work that we talk about in terms of the response to disasters, we hope will help to bring about lasting change, not just temporary change. And so, you have your plans, and hopefully you'll continue to somehow find ways to be supportive as you pursue your own personal future. Sawana, I know that women play a critical role. We heard yesterday about how the most likely victims of natural disasters are women and children. And now you're talking about the need to educate children so that they're better prepared for their futures. Do you have anything else to add about the specific needs and roles of women in not only disasters and their recovery, but in the future of Dominica as well?
Sure. Women in Dominica seem to be very strong and resilient, and I guess because we live in a society that's sort of, it's a man's world, you know what I mean? But
oh no, I have some idea of that.
Well, yeah, I agree. Definitely. It seems to be, and even in the struggle, we Dominican women are very educated. We've traveled the world, seen much, and our role is basically to shine light on the younger women. Because we need mentors. They need to understand that even if they've gone through abuse, because we've had several cases. I worked in social protection before, so I understand the damage that abuse has caused on our young people. And they need to find models of strength, models of resilience, because for our kids that are coming up, we need strong women. And we need trailblazers as well, because you have set the trail for a lot of women. Like in the Caribbean, we look at you, we admire you, we adore you, and we want to be great. We want to be influential, and there's the possibilities. And even in disaster brings opportunities for us. Disaster has brought us the opportunity of your foundation coming to Dominica, and we have the representatives of Dominicans yesterday who were marvelous and amazing. And if the young women in our country are tuned into Facebook Live, they they are empowered by this. You know what I mean? They think everything is absolutely possible just because we had representation here yesterday and representation today. And I feel that we just have to stand in our truth, stand in our authenticity, and be the women that we were called to be. You know, because I think all of us have a particular calling, and that is what I want to. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to be. That is actually who I am. You know, just someone who will stand to duty, position myself, that when the opportunity comes, I can ride with it. And that is the opportunity I want to create for my country, and that is why I want to network with so many people here, because Israel has changed my life, because there are so many different persons from different parts of the world, and their perspective has changed mine in some ways, and my perspective has changed their perspective in some ways. So that sharing of culture, that sharing of knowledge, that vibe for humanity, this is what I want to spread light for my country and for the rest of the world.
That's great. That's so terrific. And finally, Amira, I know that you've been an activist and an organizer, I guess ever since you could walk. And I believe that you helped to ban bottled water. Is that right? At your university, and so you've always been looking for ways to make an impact, and particularly in the area of the environment, which is what has captured your attention and commitment. So just briefly, from your perspective as a young Puerto Rican working to better and provide more opportunities for young people here on the island, what do young people in Puerto Rico need most? I mean, what are the top three goals that if you could wave the magic wand, you would try to provide for young people so that they can see a future here on the island, they can see economic opportunity, they can see this beautiful place recover and provide for everyone?
Rather than three things, I would say that we need two. We need trust and we need empowerment. There are so many prepared young people and smart people here that have to leave because we feel like the island doesn't trust us to be able to do what we want to do, to perform the professional area that we want to perform in. And we need empowerment because, again, there's so many people with so many great ideas that they just need like a little funding, a little push, a little permission to express their ideas. And so many people feel so isolated in that, in the thought that they want to change this island, that they want to make a difference, but they don't feel like anyone supports them. So I feel like trust and empowerment can go a long way to help young people.
That is just great. Wow, let's give them a big round of applause and thank them for being part of this wonderful panel. Thank you all. Trust and empowerment is a great way to end that panel and to move on to our next commitment and our next panel. I want to invite Harriet Linsky, Executive Director and co-founder of Hands Across the Sea, to come forward. In September 2017, Hurricane Maria damaged 90% of the buildings in Dominica, as we have heard, Dominica, including schools, and that significantly impacted school children. Damaged schools meant damaged libraries, leaving communities without a dedicated space to focus on literacy outside of the classroom. Hands Across the Sea commits to restoring the libraries of 2 schools in Dominica's northeast villages of Cathexis and of Woodford Hill, ultimately giving 160 students and 15 teachers access to library resources, including more than 1,800 new books. Hands Across the Sea will manage the restoration of these libraries, including painting walls and creating colorful murals. To support the local economy, nearly all of the materials for the project will be purchased in Dominica, and Hands Across the Sea will employ local craftspeople to complete the projects. Now, in order to build a community around these libraries, 10 students will be trained to be actually librarians. And Hands Across the Sea will work with school staff to conduct ongoing outreach to families and teachers to promote library resources. I just want to say a word here because this is one of my daughter's absolutely favorite projects. I think she's already tweeted about it, and she is so focused on making it clear that there is something for everybody to do. Sometimes people get overwhelmed by the scale of the problems that we face, but every big problem can be broken down into little bite-sized pieces that then can be part of an overall solution. So I want to thank Hands Across the Sea for taking on this important work in Dominica. Let's see. Deanna James? Deanna James? Yeah. I am thrilled that this commitment is being made, and I need my commitment card because I ran out of commitment cards up here, so we'll hopefully get that in time for a photograph. Hurricane Maria exposed the critical need for energy independence in isolated neighborhoods on the U.S. Virgin Islands. And the St. Croix Foundation for Community Development is determined to try to address this. 100 days, more than 3 months after the storm, over half of the population of St. Croix remained without critical utilities and could not access the limited distribution points. In addition, unemployment in the U.S. Virgin Islands is over twice that of the mainland United States, at 10% of the population. And this obviously creates barriers for young people to find high-paying, high-skilled jobs. So to help create more opportunities for youth entering the workforce and to address the need for solar energy in individual neighborhoods, the St. Croix Foundation and its partners, CDP, the JPB Foundation, the Virgin Islands Workforce Investment Board, Sustainable System and Design International, and Lion's Den Solar, will pilot the installation of solar PV systems at community centers. Through this commitment, 4 community centers will receive solar installations, allowing them to provide their immediate communities with access to energy after a disaster. This program will also train and certify 40 young people to install the systems, giving them the skills and the certification they need to secure better employment. Now, ultimately, the hope is that this program creates a replicable model of sustainable community development powered by affordable renewable energy. So, obviously, the St. Croix Foundation would love additional partners. They're looking for additional solar equipment and financial resources to scale this pilot. But this is one of those comprehensive approaches that we've got to really work on and model and then replicate. And I want to thank you for taking this commitment on. And just think of the fun we'll have going to visit all of these projects in the years ahead. Our second panel is a really exciting group of people who each have made a specific contribution to not only their communities, as you will hear, but literally to the world, and also to the importance of bringing people together to solve problems. Please welcome the Mayor, Carmen Yulín Cruz, and the President and CEO of Save the Children, Carolyn Miles, and the General Manager and Chief Developer Advocate from IBM, Willie Tejeda. This is a powerhouse panel, as you can tell, and honestly, I'm a long time supporter and fan of Save the Children. I became a huge fan of the mayor in the midst of the devastation of the hurricanes on her city, where we are here in San Juan, and I'm very grateful to IBM for their pioneering, visionary work about how to use coding to help prevent and respond to natural disasters. So this is a great opportunity. And again, I want to connect it to young people. Now, as we heard in the first panel, and as we've heard before, everybody's affected by a terrible disaster like Irma and Maria inflicted on these places. But young people really are often the most affected. Their schools shut down, their families are traumatized, dislocated, healthcare is hard to access. There are just so many problems that fall disproportionately on young people. And I think it's important that we hear from these three panelists who each in her or his way is trying to both help and empower young people. And let me start with you, Carolyn, and the work that you do at Save the Children. Carolyn has been at Save the Children for a number of years, so she has been in the trenches all over the world and knows very well what happens in natural disasters to families, and particularly to kids, with the uncertainty and the stress and the trauma, which leaves both physical and mental health challenges. And so based on your very extensive experience, Carolyn, what are some of the best strategies that you've seen around the world, and in particular now your work here, to help address the aftermath of disasters, but also to better prepare and really strengthen the systems that are around to help people whenever the next disaster hits?
Well, thank you. And I do want to start with a personal thank you to you for your support of children, not only in the United States, but around the world. I can't think of anything more important. Maybe I'm a little biased, but more important than working for children and youth for the future, because they are the future, obviously. So here in Puerto Rico and around the world, one of the things that we have found is so important is in that initial response. So Save the Children did come to Puerto Rico within weeks of the emergency. We weren't here before, and we did debate whether or not we should do that or not, but our mission is about reaching the most deprived children. And when we said, and we work in the continental US, and we said, this looks like a place where we need to be. One of the things that we found is not just that first emergency response, which is about food and water, and for us, diapers and baby food and things like that, which are specifically for children, but what we call psychological first aid. And we actually try to do that immediately in part of our first response, which is child-friendly spaces that we set up, which gets kids back to some normal routine. And it also identifies there's you know, kids are amazing. They start playing, they start being a child, they love the idea of, even if it's not regular school, they get back to a routine with other children, but you can always tell there's a couple kids that are sitting to the side. They're not smiling, they're not participating. Those are the children that need help, and so trying to get that help right away. The other thing that we have now started to do is we've developed a program called Journey of Hope, and that program is really looking at the mental health issues, and it's a train the trainer program, so it trains teachers, caregivers, parents, and students themselves, older students, on how do you get over that trauma. And I've been in Puerto Rico the last couple days visiting our programs, and I went to visit a mom and a daughter, her daughter, Shashika, and she told us about, in the aftermath, she said, first of all, she was terrified during the hurricane, obviously, and her way of dealing with it was praying, which is a good way, and kids all have their own way of dealing with that trauma, but she said afterwards, you know, she really felt devastated. And she said, I thought about cutting myself, I thought about, you know, did I really want to keep going? And her mom was right there with her as we had this discussion. And she said, but going through this program, I realized that, first of all, I wasn't alone, which was super important, that it wasn't me feeling like this. It was many of my friends all feeling like this. And we learned how we develop resilience and what we do. And she said, for me, prayer is still really important, but some of my friends, you know, thought about a safe place, and they used that as a way to kind of feel safe, and there were all sorts of techniques that people used, and her mother had been trained as well. So that's a program that now we do in the recovery phase, and we've trained about 4,000, close to 4,000 people here in Puerto Rico on that technique. So super important, but this idea that mental health is somehow kind of later, you know, it's a luxury, or it's not as important as other survival needs. We do have to change that idea, I think, and incorporate that into what we do right away, and then have programs that really build that resilience. So our hope, and we will stay in Puerto Rico, we've made commitments to be here at least for the next few years, working on education, working on mental health, and that setting up that network of people who have been trained and know how to help young people and caregivers get through those issues is really important.
You know, I think that you're reminding us about the importance of mental health right away, the importance of giving some kind of emotional support to families, but particularly focusing on kids, needs to be said over and over again, because it's just not understood as the critical component of not only personal recovery, but community recovery that it is. But I also appreciate your mentioning diapers and baby food, because, you know, as the furlough continued in our government, you know, last couple of weeks, and particularly for the lower paid federal workers, and especially contract federal workers who may never get back pay. One of the things that the Clinton Foundation did was to not only partner up with Jose Andres and help to get restaurant partners to provide meals, but also to partner with some diaper companies and to set up in Little Rock, where the foundation's presidential center is located, a program to provide diapers, because they are expensive. I mean, if you are a low-wage worker, paying for diapers is a chunk of your readily available funds. So looking at the whole panoply of needs, which is something that Save the Children has you know, been expert at doing, what lessons from other parts of the world do you think are applicable, you know, here, not only in Puerto Rico, but in the Caribbean, or really any place that has a devastating natural disaster?
So I would say there are two programs that, in thinking about this region, that I think are really important for youth. One is, and I know we're going to talk about youth employability, and I am really anxious about the statistics here for young people, and that 20% of the population is under 18, and that is going down. And particularly for young people who are leaving with their young children, right? That is a generation that we're going to lose here in Puerto Rico. So making sure that there are opportunities. We have a large-scale program in about 7 countries in the world with Accenture, one of our business partners, and they are actually partnering with businesses to help train youth in very realistic and applicable skills. So they partner with the companies who say, these are the kinds of things that we need. These are the kinds of jobs we have that we are waiting to fill. And here's what we need in terms of training. And then training young people. The coolest thing that we're doing in that program is actually using VR to actually help kids in all of these remote areas in 7 countries in the Middle East and in Asia actually do training, for example, on interviews. So they become an avatar, they go on the system, they actually do an interview, and it tells them what did you do well, what did you not do so well, and then it creates these environments that they can see what it's like to be a restaurant worker, a hospitality hotel clerk, and they can match that with the things they want to do. So I do think here in Puerto Rico, one of the most important things we can do is work on that youth employability program. That'll be super important.
Well, actually, you know, it's very important in Puerto Rico and in the other islands in the Caribbean. This is a huge problem around the world. And it's only going to become a bigger problem with the advances in automation and robotics and artificial intelligence, because a lot of entry-level like jobs will be the first to go, or a lot of repetitive jobs where people maybe without a lot of education found their way into the workforce. It's going to be one of the biggest causes of instability, conflict, and we're not really thinking it through. And what you said about virtual reality, and we'll get to Willie in a minute, about how we can use technology to try to remediate the effects of technology on employment, and particularly on young people, is going to be one of the biggest challenges we face. Well, let me now move to someone who I'm, very glad to see, very glad she's here. In the aftermath of a terrible disaster, people really look for leadership. They look for somebody to identify with them, empathize with them, and help lead them about, okay, how are we going to respond? And the mayor certainly was on the spot from the very beginning in everything that she tried to do. And because there was no electricity in the vast majority of Puerto Rico, a lot of people here in Puerto Rico didn't see what we saw from coverage being beamed back to the mainland, and how hard she was fighting for the needs of her people to be met. And in particular, Mayor, I wanted to ask you to maybe share some of the stories that you recall from those early days, and in particular, how young people stepped up, how you organized them, how you reached out to them, what they're still doing to try to, build back San Juan even better than before.
Well, first of all, let me start like Carolyn started thanking you. I all of a sudden get a call from somebody that says she's Hillary Clinton to my phone, and I'm thinking, yeah, sure. She's got nothing better to do. But in fact, it was Hillary Clinton. And for a moment, I closed my eyes and only wished that time had not passed, but that's for another day. I had like 45 reasons why, we could just talk in a different way. But she said, look, we have this foundation. My husband runs this foundation. We're all involved, and we want to make sure that we're there to help. And help they did. So thank you very much. It's I don't know how important people think it is when you're in a situation like we were, for somebody else that tells you that your life matters to them. Because you truly are all alone. And all you have is the strength of your soul. For those that can find it. Because it is very difficult to find it. So one of the things that we did early on, the municipality of San Juan ran 7 shelters. And we built into those shelters help for young children. We even had clowns, social workers, psychologists that were there to ensure that the children were being taken care of, and the adults also. We made sure, and you know, I have been very, very adamant about how sucky FEMA had been throughout this whole situation. But their baby food was wonderful. They had these packages for children of formula and baby food and diapers, and that was outstanding, and it really helped us help our population. So we did two things. We made sure, number one, that every family that had a child in a shelter could go back to a home, rather than letting them open the doors and then just go in and not seeing what they were going to find. Number two is we opened the doors of the 3 municipal schools on October 23rd. So that was 1 month and 3 days afterwards. They ran a full schedule and they ran an after-school program. Why? For 3 reasons. It truly takes a village. People need to go back to work, and they can't go back to work if their children are not in a safe place. And frankly, people needed food. So this was a place to give not only the children, but the family, breakfast, lunch, and packed dinner, so that they would have a warm meal at home. In fact, the municipality of San Juan got recognized by Health and Human Services because 14 of our early Head Starts and Head Starts became soup kitchens where 1,500 people would go on a daily basis to get food. But one of the most interesting things is that we often think that young people like to help young people, and young people like to help everybody. 65 shelters the municipality of San Juan took care of, and that was through a group of volunteers, young people. They were run by people that were part of the government and not part of the government, and we just did an SOS. And as they are extremely good in doing, they communicated with one another. So we had about 100 volunteers that would literally go to these elderly homes and would go look one by one to these elderly, most of them patients, people that had not had chemotherapy or had not had dialysis. And they would come back and they would need to be taken care of themselves, because what they were seeing was a devastation unlike they had never seen before. I had the opportunity to go speak at Mount Holyoke College. And through Mount Holyoke College, in an alliance with the municipality of San Juan, we took these young girls, 21 girls, from a very, very impoverished community called Playita. Now, Playita is very feisty. They don't have a lot of money, but they have a lot of heart, and they have a lot of pride. So we started a STEM program with them. It ran for 1 week. This year, it will run for 1 month. All girls, because Mount Holyoke is an all-girls school. And one of the things that we do is now every Saturday, these young women go to our science and math school, and they are becoming teachers for other children in their community. And they are taught via Skype. Technology is wonderful. From Mount Holyoke College with the professors in our school and some university professors that are teaching them. And one of the things that, I forget her name, but the young woman from Puerto Rico that was here before, I think also when you're talking about what we can do is government needs to rethink itself. You know, we can't think out of the box because Maria took our box. We have no box. So we really have to be platform for all these young people to go wild and not think about what is in it for us, but what's in it for them. How do we let them loose? Because I'm sure at some point Amelia Earhart was young and somebody thought she's crazy, and the Wright brothers were young and somebody thought he was crazy, and you know, the Ford brothers, and it was like, no, this will never happen. So the best ideas come when people think, no, this will never happen. This is what will happen. A lot of the urban programs for food sustainability are coming from young people. So what we're doing is to say, look, we'll give you a building and you go wild and you do What do you want to do? So we at the municipality are just a platform for people to have an opportunity to have the wildest dreams come true. And if government gets out of the way, imagination takes over. And when imagination finds partners, and imagination finds people that take care of your soul, which is very important, and I know it sounds very Woodstock, but it's true. Your soul needs to be taken care of. I mean, we still have children that when it rains and it pours, go underneath their desk at school because they think another storm is coming. We have old people that have given up. And you know, one thing that we have to understand is that in Puerto Rico, more than 3,000 people died. And they did not have to die. They died because of the negligence of a botched effort. So in whatever we do from now on, we have to make sure that we know that government isn't going to get everywhere, every place, or should not. One of the things that we have done, and we are building two right now, we already have two working. They're called in English CCTs, Centers for Community Transformation. And they're going to be built in 21 of the hardest stricken communities in San Juan. And they are everything you would need for first aid, solarized. I said it in Miami, I'll say it again. You have no power when you have no power. This is more, we're freezing over here right now, but we really don't want electricity. I know, it's, you know, we really don't want electricity to have air conditioning. We want electricity for children to be able to go to school, but it doesn't have to be electric, it can be solar. So one of the things that we have done, and I know that Bill Horan is here from Operation, used to be from Operation Blessing, now he has his own ONG, and Alice Chong is here. We got this lights that we could give to children. And when you hook a child, you hook the family. I didn't care about recycling until my daughter brought in many years ago a recycling project from school, so I was forced to do this. But children need to learn the advantages of solarizing. Now, we were talking about, we're on a solar vortex in Puerto Rico, not the Chicago vortex. We have 322 days of the year out of 365 where we get enough sun to produce our own solar energy. So we don't have to wait for anyone. We can have a combination, but we should go green and clean. So they gave us, through Operation Blessing, this cubes that we started calling Cubes of Hope, and now they have this one. Look at this. One of the things that you lose, and I don't get any money from doing this, by the way. One of the things you do, look at how beautiful it is. And it's not only beautiful, but you can charge your cell phone with it. It gives you about 12 hours of energy. The higher you put it in your home, the more light it gives you. Now, what this does to an adult, it's maybe the light. What it does to a child is it lets them know that power is in their hand, that they can just walk outside and look at the sun and get power to energize their home. They can get power to read and to study. So things like this, little gadgets that you think are little, can change the frame of mind of people and can make people understand that hope is not on the way, but hope is here. So I think it's very important that we're doing one thing, and with this I'll circle back, but San Juan has the largest urban market in Puerto Rico. And through the Clinton Foundation, we have been able to hook up with the Solar Foundation and the Hispanic Federation and other donors. Right now, it has $1.1 million have been raised through the Global Clinton Foundation to solarize the entire market. The municipality of San Juan at this point has provided $400,000 and the work to do all of the changing of the lights to LED and make it a lot more efficient and effective. But truly, if we want to change the way that communities, not countries, communities, deal with crises, we have to put alliances together so that solarization is a reality. That is what will make children with diabetes not have to die because their diabetes went wrong. That is what will keep people in respirators breathing. It is not about solar power. It truly is about saving lives. So in this first phase, it should be done by May. We will be able to, through batteries and solar panels, about 800 solar panels, on a combination solarize the largest urban market. This gives work to about 300 people that work there, most of them women. Some of them women that are immigrants in San Juan that have to work even harder to make sure that their children are taken care of. So we have 60% of our population is under the poverty line. The only way that we will push through is if we use the alliances that we can forge and if we use the technology that we can put together to ensure that young minds are the ones that lead the way, because they don't have any preconceived notion. They are much more in tune with themselves, and they can take the political powers to be and bring them down if they get in the way. And we need a lot more of that.
Well, I think that I think what the mayor just said is such a great follow-on to what Amira said about the need for more trust and empowerment of young people, and getting out of the way, providing opportunities, creating space for young people to be part of the solution, not just part of the problem. We talk about how they're low unemployment and all the rest of that. Well, that can be turned around. And that is one of the things that IBM has been doing. And I'm really excited by IBM's commitment to this, Willie. Tell us what a chief developer advocate is, and tell us about the education, apprenticeship, mentorship programs, and also about the coding program that IBM is leading.
Absolutely. Secretary Clinton, first let me just say we're very excited actually to be here and very excited about the commitment that we made yesterday. The synergy that we actually see with CGI is really that when we looked at the types of organizations to partner with, CGI really had the kind of roll up your sleeves, get from ideas to action philosophy and mentality that really was aligned with our thinking. And the value that we thought we could actually bring as IBM is how can we actually scale that through technology? So when you think about what I do as a chief developer advocate for all of IBM, it's recognizing this idea that when I was growing up, doctors, lawyers, scientists, researchers were the occupation that my parents were striving to say, these are the change agents of the world. But if you think about how many lines of code everyone accessed here on the way to get here, just to be in this room. If you think about what's impacted the way we work, play, entertain, conduct commerce, a developer was right at the heart of those types of changes. So the challenge there, or the opportunity there, is really that the developer is really today's architect and change agent in terms of helping us build through a number of challenges. And the interesting part is we put so much focus right now, oftentimes on business, and the developers and what they can do for business. IBM's thought and what we put forth in terms of our mission last year was how can we harness the 23 million developers around the world and point them towards some of society's most pressing issues. And as we looked at the landscape of what those issues might be, natural disasters certainly actually became one that popped itself to the forefront. So the idea of focusing on some of these most pressing issues, and really we like to use the word unleashing the power of these developers, oftentimes young-minded developers, against these societal issues, is really what IBM has put a tremendous amount of effort on, and in partnership, of course, with CGI. So one of the things that we try to strive to do is this idea of empowerment and enablement. You know, developers have a different type of viewpoint and look on life, where some people see challenges, they see solutions. That's just ultimately how they think. But the responsibility for us as IBM and everybody in this room is to help them with empowerment. I'll give you an example of what we do in business that we have to actually start to see with our youth and the developers that can actually help with situations like we have here in Puerto Rico and other areas in the world that are hit by natural disasters. We see young developers coming up and have tremendous amount of potential, and we bring together domain experts from all over, and we say things like, oh, you do a startup, oh, you have an enterprise company, oh, you're in the public sector. Come talk to my young developers and tell them about your challenges and problems so they can solution and think about, in many cases, being a disruptor in business. You know, that's the thing that's kind of held up you as a developer, being a disruptor in business, creating new models, new spaces, new economies. You know, the thing that we don't do, that we tried to do, and in many cases partnered here in Puerto Rico about, was when you apply the developer towards these pressing issues in society, how do we do the same thing? And what we did was we said, okay, who are the domain experts in here that can help solution? First responders. Bring in domain experts of first responders. Match them up with your developers so that they can actually see the view from the problem of the first responder and say, okay, how do I solution for that? Bring in experts on hurricanes and floodings and wildfires and add that actually into the mix too. And then unleash them. Give them access to code. Give them access to the subject matter experts that will allow them to essentially ideate and amaze us with what they can actually build. We did a codeathon in August of last year at Engine 4, the Bayamon City. Engine 4 was the accelerator that we did it. We had about 200 developers turn out for that. And the winner of that particular codeathon was a gentleman by the name of Pedro Cruz, young-minded person who simply took his daily life and applied it to what could actually be done. And he created a solution called DroneAid. And what that person did, what he did was he said, when I flew my drone to go check on my parents and my grandmother, I realized that there was writing on the ground, talking about the date, talking about how many people there were, talking about the needs that they actually had. And he came up with this idea that said, you know, with my drone, I can collect this information on a much more global basis if I have a standard language for communication. And his idea of disaster preparedness was giving essentially a language for how you talk about, I need water, I need medication, this is how many people are actually there. And then in mass, using that technology across to gather that information. Pedro won the competition here in Puerto Rico. You know, we did something with Chelsea at University of Chicago, and another codeathon. And again, we unlocked what these young people can actually do when they're applying their talents and their techniques to solve a problem in this area. Last year, we gathered over 100,000 developers across 156 nations in a coding competition we called Call for Code. And we had over 2,000 solution submissions from this particular area. And the top solution came from a gentleman who was going to school in North Carolina, was impacted by their own hurricanes actually there, and found that the first thing that happens when a disaster hits like that is the communication grid goes down. And they ideated, how do I put up an ad hoc communication grid? How do I marry it with an artificial intelligence disaster coordination platform and make that a solution for situations like this? They won the competition on a global basis. We're taking that competition winner and partnering with the CIO office of Puerto Rico as what we call an implementation partner. Because what we're trying to do is take these competitions and not just have it be a competition, but take the solutions and really then apply them to the ground where they really will have impact. and partnering with the CGI office of Puerto Rico, actually seeing those solutions in action. So, Secretary Clinton, you asked what could we do to activate these young folks? Number one is they're still at an age where they're unjaded. They're almost like the art of the possible. And both the winner of the global competition and the local competition here were self-taught developers. So we're in this amazing time where the availability of technology is simply an internet connection. And the availability of subject matter experts to help those folks along, the mentoring, is there in the communities. And so it's really a movement where what we're trying to do is empower those individuals to know where the access is, to know where the subject matter, to participate in those communities, so they can build these amazing solutions and really start at a very early age. You know, another story that's directly related to developers is when I was raising my three daughters, there was a lot of talk about what second language should they learn. You know, there was a lot of growth in China, should it be Mandarin? And I would challenge that the lingua franca of success and business success and society success is development and coding. And so the challenge that we accepted and the commitment we accepted from CGI, I'll put back out to the audience here and say, how do you then take and unleash and empower the use of our world where learning to code and develop is right at their fingertips? Their passion for Puerto Rico and the Caribbean region will fuel the ideas of what they'll try to solve, whether it be being prepared, whether it be connecting families that essentially were separated. The sky's the limit in what they'll actually think about. And so IBM's about unleashing these young minds, giving them access to the technologies and the experts, and linking them together so that they can essentially form their own community to change the world. We put a lot of value in these business disruptors, and what we're looking for is a group of positive disruptors, very much like the mayor said, that can use technology and coding and use their development powers to solve some of these problems.
Oh, that's so great to hear, because especially as you concluded, to talk about how we can be positive disruptors and how, you know, disruption for the sake of disruption, you know, that the jury is out when it comes to human services and government services. But there's no doubt positive disruption would work. Say a little bit more about that.
So the idea of positive disruption is, in many cases, again, the analogy is the business disruptor. You know, we put a lot of positive aspects in business disruptor. They're never asked to disrupt the business. They're never asked to invite to go create white space or take action along those lines. And the issue about they already feel empowered. You know, when we talk about developers and putting a positive disruptive action on it, we don't want them to wait for government. We don't want them to wait for the private sector to tell them what they're allowed to do. We want them to insert tension into the system and say, why isn't it so easy to get these supplies over here? Why can't we use simple communication vehicles like Pedro used? I mean, when you really think about it, he could have come up with a highly complex, hard to roll out, takes $1 billion to, you know, and he came out with something very powerful, which was something as simple as a drone and simple, even if you don't have the match, you can draw these symbols actually on the ground. Being a positive disruptor means that, one, you're entitled to actually go and disrupt the system. But number two, you're not being bound by the way we used to do it. And there's so much of that in business that we encourage. And in society, and for some of the most pressing issues, we're challenging the developers to say, be a positive disruptor. Think about new ways to do it. Think about the infrastructure that you can enable and tap into. And really insert positive tension into the system. And when you do that, usually you'll have a lot of people follow along. And I think that that's one of the things that we really want to try to do with this idea of positive disruption.
Well, that's great, and I wanted to turn to the mayor to follow up on that, because that's a young person's game largely. And so when we're talking about trusting, empowering, positive, disrupting, you have to think about young people. And you mentioned, Willie, the CGI University that we hold every year, and the last one was at the University of Chicago, and there's always a hackathon associated with it, and we thank you for being part of it now, because amazing ideas come out. I mean, things that were absolutely not on anybody's agenda. These young people come together and solve it. So Mayor, let me ask you to take these last moments to really talk about what else Puerto Rico needs and what else San Juan needs, because you have been, just so brave in advocating for the needs of your people. And I know that there's a problem with money that's been appropriated by the Congress that is sitting in the federal government treasury that is not being distributed, as well as additional challenges. Do you want to say a few words about that?
Do you want me to be brutally honest?
Yeah, I want you to be brutally honest, of course.
Well, we need a president that cares, first of all. And that doesn't think about politics, but thinks about saving lives. We also need to look for permanent solutions to recurring problems. We're in a position that the plane is broken, and we have to fix it and fly it at the same time. We don't have the luxury of saying, well, we're going to make it absolutely perfect. We have to push through that. We have to empower young people, and we have to empower women, because a lot of what happens in a household will happen when the women unleash the power of the people in that home to do what they can. About 70% of all the uniparental homes in Puerto Rico are led by a female. And 60% of our children are under the poverty line. So we have to ensure that we have a combination of health and educational programs that will move people along and will ensure that the middle class continues to exist. But we have to go through nitty-gritty things like the Jones Act. USVI has a release from the Jones Act for anything that has to do with energy. So we have to have, and I understand the intricacies of sitting down and talking to our maritime brothers and sisters. So even though I would like it to be repealed completely, at least let us have exactly what the USVI has for the purposes of every energy source, not only gas, because it appears like fracking has produced an excess of gas in the United States, and they want to bring it down to Puerto Rico, and that will just, burden us for another 50 years of fossil fuel. We also need FEMA to change its rules. And I don't mean this in any disrespect, but FEMA does not work. It is a bureaucratic entity which seems to be more geared to working for themselves. You can applaud a little louder than that, it's fine. And what we need is a set of communications that will help us move forward. But most of it, we need people not to forget, but not to forget about Puerto Rico, about the USBI, about Dominica, about Haiti, about the entire Caribbean region, which continues and will continue to suffer from climate change issues, as Chicago and the Midwestern is suffering now, because climate change is real. So it is not fake news, it is real, and we need to ensure that our children and our communities have the tools to understand why it is important to them to change these. And finally, we need the darn money to get here. This is not help. This is what we are owed, because we are people. People, We are an island surrounded by water, lots and lots of water, ocean water, and we understand that may make it more difficult. But, if you think you get the help there before it is needed, and you make sure that the platforms are there for people to decide to themselves. And the last thing I'll say, that is one thing that I have come to respect, not only about the Clinton Foundation, but about everyone that has come to Puerto Rico. They don't come to tell us what to do. They come to respect and enable us to do what we think needs to be done. And that respect and that dignity is powerful beyond words. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Mayor. And Carolyn, for the last words from this excellent panel, based on your very broad experience, specifically, you say you're going to be here in Puerto Rico for years, which I think is excellent news. And how do you see your mission changing over time here in Puerto Rico? And are you in any of the other islands that have been hit?
We're only here in Puerto Rico.
So lessons can be learned and applied.
Absolutely. I think there's two things that are really important. I want to tie back to this little gizmo that you showed us. One of the things that was so eye-opening, I think, about the disaster here in Puerto Rico was the amount of time that many schools, maybe not in San Juan, but that many schools were down. So months. We actually estimated 13 million hours of education was lost during Maria. So what can we do differently? We can actually use that solar vortex that we talked about to actually implement solar panels and solar energy in schools. And we have 12 pilot schools that we're working with Rocky Mountain Institute, who I think was here yesterday, where we are actually able to totally run the essentials in those schools. They're also able to produce additional energy, so if we can get PREPA to buy it back, we actually have an economic model there that is really useful. But the most important thing I saw about that the other day was we have curriculum for 1st through 8th grade. So every grade has a curriculum that teaches them what are those things up on that roof, why are they important, why should I learn about them. To your point about how recycling came back into families, this is about teaching kids why renewable energy is actually the future. And for Puerto Rico, this would have made a tremendous difference. So it would have saved lives. It would have obviously gotten kids back to school. It would have been able to do all those things. So we actually think that we're just doing 12 pilot schools, but we're working with the Secretary of Education, trying to get this rolled out so that all schools in Puerto Rico actually, and then we can look at these lessons learned for the whole region. So that's one thing. And the other thing we'll be doing here, which is important for Save the Children everywhere around the world, is early childhood development. Every 3- and 4-year-old actually getting a chance to start school together, getting that head start that they need to be able to be successful in school. So those are the things we'll be doing here.
Well, let's show this panel our appreciation for an excellent discussion. Thank you. Thank you.